Yeah, let's talk about that. Hello there, and welcome back to the Codex. Today we have the very exciting Jade Shadows update. Lots of changes today. New Warframe Jade, we have her 3 weapons, the Evensong, the Cantare, Harmony, we have the enemy status changes, we have the Ember rework, which I believe came out today. Either that or is maybe coming out on Thursday, along with her skin. The new event, new quests, so much to go over. In this video, we're going to be primarily going over Jade and her 3 weapons, which I have been hard at work slapping lots of forma onto. I have already slapped 5 on her, and anywhere from 3 to 5 on all 3 of her weapons. Ready to showcase to you. Let's hop into the Jade build here. Which, first thing I'll note is that my Archon shard choices are not at all finalized. Right now, I'm running 2 armor, 2 duration, and 1 casting speed, and none of these are even Tau forged. The reason I'm running the armor is because she has some decent damage reductions that you'll see in the build in a moment here, and her armor is really low. So adding that amount of flat armor adds a pretty nice layer of EHP stacking to her health, which is then multiplied by the aerodynamic aura that I'm running here and adaptation. So these stack multiplicatively with each other, so this is coming up on like 93-ish% damage reduction, which would go even higher if there was more people in the party using aerodynamic, since it is an aura. Aerodynamic is useful on her because her 4th ability, Glory on High, does make her ascend into the sky and fly around, so she is flying a lot of the time. So going over the build here, if you want, you can just take a moment to take it all in. She does have 2 aura mod slots. This is the first Warframe in the game to ever have 2 aura mod slots. At first, I was thinking growing power and aerodynamic, and then I realized that brief respite would be pretty good on her based on the amount that you cast. Like, I'm throwing out her first ability a lot, for example. Her second ability is also able to give her shield buff to regen and regen delay, so brief respite on top of that, along with augur reach, can help to augment the efficacy of her shields a little bit. You could, of course, use, growing power instead, whatever you want. I will point out, regarding auras, if you want to make a super team buffer Jade build, remembering that she has 2 aura mod slots, you could slot on both growing power and power donation, which just between having those 2 aura mods on would give your team 55% more power strength, 30% passively from power donation, and then an extra 25% from growing power whenever they proc a status, on top of the fact that her second ability is a power strength increase as well from one of the 3 aura effects that she gives. So I'm running adaptation here, like I said, for the 90% DR. Stack the aerodynamic is pretty good. Streamline, I was running Umbral Intensify here. Then I realized that she does use quite a bit of energy. So I swapped out Umbral Intensify for Streamline, and honestly, losing that strength is not a problem, because between the fact that I'm using Augmented here for another 60% that I'll get in the mission, on top of the 155 I already have, that already puts you over 200, and then her second ability, Symphony of Mercy. Really interesting to know about that, and we'll go over all 4 of her abilities in a moment here, and then I'll showcase them in a mission. The power strength increase from Power of the 7, which is one of the 3 buffs from this. I tested it, and it caps out at 150%, which is still very good. I was hoping it wouldn't have a gap, hoping it had no cap, at least for the first day, because that'd be really funny with Nidus, causing a just infinite stacking loop of Parasitic Link and recasting and so on, for those of you that know what I mean. But it does go up to 150% strength, so just from this, you can add another 150% to the arsenal value you see here. So if you have 155 plus 60 from Augmented, plus that, then you're well over 300. You're closing on 400 plus, actually. So especially in Fisher missions, where you're going to get corrupted, the amount of strength is not going to be a problem. Also, this effect, this second ability, if you read it here, it says extend the duration of each song by killing enemies surrounded by judgments. So this aura can snapshot, as in you can cast it, especially when you have a temporary buff like Void Corruption, and then as long as you keep getting kills against enemies that you apply Judgment to, which you can easily do with her first ability, for example, this will never end. So you can very easily, actually, more easily than you think, get that max 150% strength cap and then keep it basically indefinitely. So her first ability here, Light's Judgment, create a well of light that heals allies and hurts enemies. Those who enter the well will be highlighted by judgments. Judgments are a very critical part of her build that we'll go over in just a moment here. So what this ability itself does, it does do some heat damage per second against them. I'm not sure if this actually procs heat status. I actually need to double check that, which we'll see in a moment here. But it does heat damage at the very least. It heals you per second when you're in it, and then it applies Judgment. Judgment is super important. Let's look at her passive here. Jade's profound understanding of the relationship between life and death grants her 2 Aura slots, so that's part of it. Some of her abilities apply Judgments, increasing enemy damage vulnerability by 50% for 10 seconds. So just applying Judgment is a 50% damage increase, at least temporarily. And then, if we hop over to her 4th ability, Soar with Destructive Power, use Alternate Fire to detonate Judgments, causing an explosion of Jade Light. Enemies inside the light's judgment radius empower the explosion. So you can detonate those judgments that you apply to enemies, which, as you saw in the first clip there, can do a ton of damage. The second ability, like we already showed, is the 3 different auras. You get either ability strength, a weapon damage increase, not a global damage increase, like it doesn't increase ability damage, and the shields per second and shield recharge delay. You can... Activating this aura is one ability, but then you can freely rotate between them to figure out which of the 3 that you want. I will say, unfortunately, the weapon damage increase from Deathbringer is a base weapon damage increase. It's not multiplicative, so it does not function like Mirage's Eclipse. I did verify that in the simulacrum. I used a weapon with just Hornet Strike on, and if this was multiplicative, with about 200% strength, it should have tripled my damage. Instead, it barely increased it because it was just adding on to the base damage. So it had diminishing returns with the base damage mods that was already on the weapon. So this is just... It's like Octavia's Amp, for example. I think that's also a base damage increase. So this ability, the damage increase, basically is just like putting on another Serration onto your weapon, for example. The third ability, or Phantom Eyes, Jade summons an accusatory gaze that slows nearby enemies and dissolves their shields and armor. So it's a total defense strip, kind of like Stynax's ability, for example. When the gaze falls upon allies, they can be revived from a distance. So if you just have this active and just look at your allies, they'll revive. This ability is really cool. This, you don't have to like throw this or target this, you just activate this, and enemies that you're looking at, or at allies, within a 70-degree angle of your view, like basically being seen by the light of these eyes, will have their defenses stripped. So just by, you just look at them, and this ability works. It's very cool. The defense reduction per second starts at 10%, and then it goes up with power strength, of course, so especially once you get into missions, once you get that Molt Augmented stacked up, once you get the Symphony of Mercy stacked up to get that power of 7 strength aura, this will get to be a much faster armor strip. Like, you'll be closer to 25-30% plus armor strip per second. So you can, and shields, so armor and shields, so you can very quickly take off their defenses, which of course is a good damage increase, even with the fact that armor was just nerfed. For example, enemies can only have a max of 2700 armor, but 2700 armor is still a 90% damage reduction. So if you do take off all that armor, that's still multiplying your damage by 10x effectively. I am using Archon Vitality on her. Take note of the fact that the 5th ability also does heat damage. And I have modded it separately for heat damage. You can mod Glory separately here. This is my current build for anybody who wants to take a quick picture of that. I'm running Corrosive and Heat. Basic build. I am using Hornet Strike as base damage because, again, this is an ability weapon, so there's no base damage arcanes you can use, so we still use Hornet Strike, for example. Pretty basic build, just Corrosive Heat. It's what you expect. You can take a picture of it if you want. I do have Heat on here, though, and that's really good because that makes Archon Vitality, the effect applies of status effects from abilities that deal heat damage, will be applied twice. I have tested this. It does work. When you proc heat with her glory, you'll get 2 heat procs instead of 1. So this basically doubles the damage, at least the heat proc output damage, of her 4th ability. It's very good. Range is very important on her. You want the range of that light's judgments to be high. That's honestly one of the main things. Along with the distance of Phantom Eyes, for example, the radius of the explosions of Glory on high. Range is good, so I'm using Augur, Reach, and Stretch. You could potentially even deal with Overextended. That actually might be a play here. Let me see, what would that look like if we did Overextended, then put back on Umbral Intensify? That would actually be an interesting option. So you gain 15% range, and you lose another 16 or so % strength. So that's still a consideration, again, because of the amount of strength that you'll have from Molt Augmented and Aura and all that. For now, though, we're going to go back to what I was using and do the Stretch plus the Augur Reach. and maybe we'll play around with that other build. Looking at the Evensong here, this is my current build. This is an interesting weapon. When you shoot an enemy, it applies 7 stacks of puncture, which is a 100% damage decrease. Because typically, I think you can only apply like 5 stacks of puncture. So putting 7 on reduces their damage by 100%, and it increases the crit chance they take by a flat 35%. So this is actually, and then it gives your allies 35% multi-shot. And I believe this buff, all of her weapons buffs, the Evensong, Cantare, and Harmony, when you're using all 3 of these, if you activate all their buffs together, it doubles all of their special effects. So I think that would be like 70% multi-shot instead. The Cantare here, you throw it at enemies, the blades, it's her unique throwing knives. And when you reload, it recalls the blades, and they deal guaranteed red crits, which is very cool. The weapon also gives reload speed to your allies. Harmony. This is heavy attacks condense all status effects that deal damage over time into a single instance. So it's kind of like Dante's 4th ability, for example, when you do the double dark verse. So the reason why this build looks so weird on Harmony, we're going to go over this one first. Why I'm using just pure Toxin along with Reflex Coil is because of that special ability. Any dots you have on the enemy, when you heavy attack them, will instantly be consumed and do all of the damage at once. So I'm doing a pure Toxin and slash build here. Slash weighting isn't very good right now. There is ways I could fix that. Like for example, you could run Naramon and use Naramon's efficiency perk. Actually, do they still have that? Yeah, I think Naramon still has an effect where it gives you heavy attack efficiency. Or is that generic? Whatever it is, whatever school can give that. You could take that and drop Reflex Coil, put on a slash mod to increase the weighting. But I think Toxin is going to be good, and I tested it. Mostly Toxin procs, a little bit of slash procs, and then when you heavy attack them, it collapses all of them and does a ton more damage. And it basically does 30% more damage as well, because you get the harmonic resonance buff from this, which increases status duration by 30%. If you increase your status duration by 30%, that means that the Toxin procs and the slash procs that you are collapsing into a single hit would have lasted 30% longer. So it takes that extra duration into account when it condenses the damage into a single hit. Then we're using Melee Crescendo to get up to permanent 12x heavy attacks, because this build is, obviously very dependent upon heavy attacks. And then the rest is what you would expect. Amalgam Organ Shatter to make it faster, Berserker Fury for the attack speed. Weeping Wounds is critical here because you want to throw on those status effects so that you can collapse them. Then obviously Blood Rush. Reflex Coil is here so that the heavy attacks don't take too long to recharge, because if you're spamming heavy attacks, you won't actually recharge quickly back up to the 12x, and you won't be hitting 12x combos. So this helps you get higher combo hits, be able to throw them out more often. Primed Smite mods, very critical for this build, because keep in mind that dots double dip faction modifier, so this is a huge damage increase, so just swap that out for whoever you're currently fighting. You could replace Prime Pressure Point with Condition Overload. Technically, that would actually be more damage, because that'd be 240% with 3 different stats effects, so that actually is a good idea. And then if you're using even more on top of that, then it just gets better, better, better. And Dreamer's Wrath is my TennoCreate mod there. Cantare here, this is a basic Corrosive Heat build. It's almost exactly what you would expect. And I am using Cascadia Flare since I'm using Heat, so you can take a picture of that if you want. The Evensong here, Evensong, super interesting. In terms of the build, again, this is basically what you expect. I'm using Corrosive Cold. Cold's even better now with the cold changes. You could drop Prime, if you want to make this a universal build where you don't have to deal with a Bane, you could drop the Prime Bane, put Serration or Amalgam Serration there instead, and then use Longbow Sharp Shot. The 300% damage from a Longbow Sharp Shot is not base damage, it's multiplicative. So if you put on Serration and gave yourself 165% damage, this would increase that 165% boosted damage by 300%. So as long as you keep getting headshots, this is a lot of damage. So it's up to you which one of those kind of loadouts that you would want to use. I know that was a real fast run through. I'm just trying to make sure that I fit as much information into this build video as I can for you guys. So let's go ahead and go and view some actual gameplay here that I'll hop into in just a moment. Aren't I just so silly? I'm over here always forgetting about the little companion tips and tricks. Before we hop into that mission, since Jade's 4th ability is a channeled ability, and you are using a lot of energy on her, because, like, for example, blowing up the judgments use energy from her 4th, and then you're just casting your 1 a lot primarily. That is why I replaced Umbral Vitality with Streamline in the first place, to take her from 100 to 130 efficiency, but you can get her up to 160 efficiency by putting Seismic Bond in your companion. Seismic Bond makes it so that while you are channeling an ability, which you are with her fourth ability, your companion's melee attacks give you ability efficiency, 3% per hit up to, for 12 seconds, up to 10 stacks. So that's up to 30% ability efficiency given to you by your companion. So with Seismic Bond stacking up, you're actually up to 160% efficiency at max in missions. So that really helps out on this build. So just keep that in mind. When you're using her, you could take that to your advantage. Okay, now we're going to hop into a Steel Path Circulus Lewis survival and see how she performs. Alrighty, welcome back everyone. Here we are in Steel Path Circulus. Let's go ahead and hop into her fourth here. Gonna use her second ability. As you can see, you can rotate between squad ability strength, squad weapon damage, and squad shield effectiveness. We're going to keep it on the ability strength for now. In fact, since I just popped it, I'm going to recast her fourth to snapshot that. Turn on her third ability to start slowing down enemies and stripping their defenses. And as you can see, that makes your damage output dramatically better. And basically just keep flying around, primarily throwing out her fourth. And you'll notice that that aura effect from her second ability, it keeps gaining duration back as long as you keep getting kills against enemies with judgment on them, which you can see indicated by the gorgeous green icon above their heads that DE did a great job designing, honestly. Now, if you look here, that 17% is the health regen that I'm currently getting. That 39% is the ability strength increase. And I'm still just waiting on my... there we go, yeah. Once my companion gets back up, hopefully he'll start getting some melee attacks to show you what that Seismic Bond ability efficiency stacking is like. And how useful that could be for Jade. So right there, you can see it in the top right, it's hitting 3%, 6%. Just keeps going up as he gets those melee attacks, 9%. And that just makes you be able to spend more and more energy with less and less of a concern. So it's been a minute and a half, over 100 kills there, just fairly casually. The aura duration is basically infinite, thanks to those judgment-based kills adding time back on. And speaking of that, keep in mind that since that is infinite, if you do get your strength up, like for example from stacking Molt Augmented, or getting a corruption buff if you're in a Fisher, or any other kind of temporary buff like that, make sure that you occasionally recast it, because otherwise you won't increase to the new value. See right now I'm 39%, let's recast. And now I'm at 49%, because my Molt Augmented has been stacked up a little bit. I'm going to hop out of this, and let's take a look at what her bow is like. Now keep in mind, I am using all three of her weapons right now, so the buffs that they give are going to be boosted, because they do have a special passive if you use all three of them together and activate their buffs. The effects are doubled. So like the multi-shot from the Evensong, for example, would be 70% instead of 35, I believe. My buff bar is just going crazy, huh? The Evensong, if you remember, I told you, it applies 7 puncture procs on hit, along with having an AoE. So those puncture procs actually apply to everyone that the AoE hits as well. So it's in a group debuffing a ton of people, which is another form of damage reduction, since when they have those 7 procs on them, they don't do any damage. Let's see what violence is like here. This is actually a pretty bad acolyte for Jade to have to face, since he nullifies abilities. So we'll see what happens here. Bo's doing some work, I'll tell you what. And my cat proc, so I got 8 skill lessons. Excellent. Yeah, I definitely like the bow, I gotta say. Especially when you're stripping their armor off like this. You just saw 1.5 million hit. Yeah, that's easy. Let's use the throwing knives here. Now, pay attention to when I reload. You'll see that I get guaranteed red crits. You see that? When you reload, it pulls the knives back out of them, back to you. Kind of like a rewinding time, basically. and it gets a guaranteed 300% crit chance. So those do a ton of damage on reload. Now I'll show you the melee build here. Now, of course, these guys are stripped because of my third ability, so I actually will turn that off in a moment here. Make sure you use those TennoCreate hits. Yeah, it's a spicy weapon. Once you get those procs on them. Let me find, see, I went down there, that's fine. Typically, you know, you wouldn't go down like that on Jade if you have your third ability up, but I'm trying to not use that right now to showcase them being a little stronger here. Let's go find myself a bit of a beefier enemy, like this guy here. And, I mean, yeah. They're not high enough level to survive this, basically. And I don't even have 12x yet. Well, ignore me being an absolute failure right now and going down while I try to showcase 17 things at once. Just hop back into her fourth ability here and get some kills racked up so I can get some air back there. Yeah, her fourth ability is really the star of the show here. Once you stack with everything else she can do, it's incredible, honestly. Now I'm going to quickly show you one more amazing trick here that you can utilize on her. So give me just one moment. Alright, I know this video is a little on the longer side for what a lot of you guys are used to, so this is going to be the last little tip here. I know there's a lot to the new update, there's a lot to this Warframe and these weapons, so I'm sure I missed a few of the smaller details. Of course, you can fill me in and other people down below in the comments, especially if you feel like it was anything major. I have no problem with you letting me know. So let's go ahead and talk about one last thing here. So, her second ability that gives the power strength, I found out that since it is a aura that affects all allies, it also affects Warframe Specters. So usually, when you throw out a Nidus Specter here, which if you guys know me, you know I love Nidus Specters. I love Specters in general. Like you've seen me use Dante Specters, for example, for their amazing overguard. Here we go. Typically, a Nidus Specter will give you 28% power strength. Because Specters are unmodded, so since Nidus has built-in 15% more strength, so that's why it's 20 instead of 25. So his base is 28% parasitic link, and that's a multiplicative power strength increase. So for example, if you have 200 strength, that's 28% of 200, so it's actually giving you 56. So it's a huge power strength increase. But if you watch this, let me go ahead and pop this 50% strength aura here, and then throw down a new Nidus Specter, or you could just run away and have him relink you. Instead of 28, it's going to be 41%. Now keep in mind that not only are you making his parasitic link in this example go from 28 to 41, but his parasitic link also increases your current total buffed power strength. It takes into account everything, your current mods, your current buffs, even if they're temporary. So not only are you making his parasitic link higher, but that higher parasitic link is also then itself scaling off of you being boosted by your own aura. So with a Nidus Spectre, you get way, way more power strength than you think that you can typically have on Jade. And remember that her aura can go all the way up to 150%. For example, since I'm linked right now, if I recast again, he just made me go up to 55%. Now let's throw out a new Nidus to again just kind of show this here. I made him a little higher than I could recast. Now you see I'm still 55, so it has, until you get to enough higher levels, it starts to have some diminishing scaling, but you can utilize this to more easily hit that 150% strength cap. And Fishers, for example, I mean, it's just amazing. Definitely utilize this for your Jade build. So again, I'm just going to one last time show the build that I was utilizing today, like in the mission that I just showed. This is my Jade build here. Again, highly recommend use Archon Vitality. It's a huge damage increase for her, given her heat damage output. So this is the Jade build. Here's the Evensong build. Again, reminder, you could drop the Prime Bane for Duration or Amalgam Duration, and then change the Arcane to Longbow Sharpshot if you want a more simplified build that works against all factions, rather than having to swap out the mod there for the factions. Here is my Cantare build, basic, basic setup for secondary, basically. And here is the interesting Harmony build. Now, on the Harmony build, given how the status collapsing damage works, I would highly recommend that you do keep the smite mods on here. It's just such an enormous damage increase. If you don't have a crescendo, you could use exposure instead, for example, get some corrosive damage or something like that. So yeah, guys, hope you enjoyed that video. I was trying to do a basically as quick as I could run down after quickly leveling all these items for you, to just get this video out, show you how amazing I think all of these items are, especially Jade herself, and just give you guys a little taste, basically, while you wait on perhaps getting those yourself from the new Ascension event, which I also will have a video on. I'm going to do videos on the Ascension, game mode, the event itself. Might talk about the new quest. Maybe I'll even record myself playing it. I'm not sure. We'll definitely talk about the Ember tweaks and that new Ember skin. We got a lot going on this week, guys. So I hope you come back, check it out. Maybe you could drop a like and subscribe to make sure you keep up to date with the channel. And I will see all of you guys in the next one.